Welcome to another Colors of Prague, Season 3, Episode 7. And this is one I always wanted to do because this is the band I'm going to discuss today. One band um, is Roxy Music. Prog by association, Prog related, could fall in many different categories. Roxy Music were formed in London in 1971. Is it Prog? Depends on the open-minded definition. They were very different. They had a chic retro noir style vocals by smooth singing, dandified, cigarette in hand, mostly in the old days, Brian Ferry. Weird synth backdrop sounds by Brian Eno, for the first two albums at least. Strange otherworldly sax and oboe colorizations in the sound from Andy McKay. And of course, Phil Manzanera and some really unique guitar playing. Somewhere between Fripp and David Gilmour. And in later years, Manzanera would join Gilmour on albums and live tours. Although the bass positions were always thought to be sort of almost like session musicians, although Paul Thompson on drums was a long-standing member. John Gustafsson of the band Quatermass, and everybody into Prague knows about Quatermass, their one and only album, I believe 1970-71, which is quite good. He was on bass from the 72 Roxy debut all the way up into Siren in 1975. Now, Roxy Music would go on several periods of hiatus. They break up, get back together again, break up, get back, or would stay together but wouldn't record now for 10 years. And they recently got together, reformed, sans Eddie Jobson and Brian Eno, for their 50th anniversary tour in the fall-winter of 2022. They played London, maybe some other European dates, and the United States, which was nice to see. So, this is the first Roxy Music album, just called Roxy Music. They were unique, and they would have these beautiful models on the covers of most of their albums, especially in the early days, usually in forms of distress or at least unhappiness. Beautiful gatefold sleeves there. It's just, there you go. And the earliest album has some great photos. Eno, Phil. It's an odd, strange album featuring one other thing about the models. I had sometimes they didn't always appear in distress. Sometimes they appeared dominant. We'll see later on, or as fictional characters from something. So, the first Roxy Music album was released in 1972. And it may be too outre for most symphonic Prague fans, but there's so much to like. One can hear an almost King Crimson sound in the backing instrumentals, but might be taken aback by Ferry's "I'll easily steal your girlfriend, your wife, your daughter" vocals. So much to like on the debut. Remake, remodel, Lady Tron, Virginia Plain. One can hear why years later Robert Fripp was so keen to collaborate with Eno. So that was the debut Roxy album. For Your Pleasure, 1973, is that cover. Maybe even more out there. And it's more than likely Roxy Music's best album is a collection of songs. Do the Strand, all swagger in style and a hookable theme. Editions of You and Every Home a Heartache, two of the most experimental Roxy music songs. And it's oh, you remember I mentioned the rotating bass thing? John Porter is on bass on this album, which is interesting. Anyway, it's all glam posturing, as you could see from the inside gatefold. But it's not glam and it's not pop. It's pretty much as I described. It's like you had a truckload of prog music heading down a highway and it crashed into an experimental bus and full of young men on their way to a convention of noir movies from the 40s, and this is the result. Stranded is another deep cut album. That's also from 1973. Brian Eno had left. Eddie Jobson replaced him. Eddie Jobson was in Curved Ear, having replaced Darrell Way before joining Roxy. And as an aside, Eddie Jobson would join Frank Zappa's band, the supergroup UK, and yes, for a brief period of time. He was also in Jethro Tull, especially on the A album and tour. And this is the Stranded cover. Now, a lot of these covers were changed when there was some outcry over the years. And people thought it was a bit much. She's just posing very hot in the Brazilian rainforest. And there's not a lot to the imagination, is there? As I said, it's a deep cut album. The best songs I could recommend on Stranded, without a doubt, are two of their best songs, A Song for Europe and Mother of Pearl. Both are on side 2 or song 6 and 7 on a CD. There's other good stuff on here. Serenade, Amazona, and Sunset. Songs started to get a bit longer, and for the matter odd. Street Life, which was a bit of a radio mainstay for a bit, is on here. It's the lead-in song, and probably the one that probably got radio airplay on here. Johnny Gustafson is back on bass on this one, also featuring choirs. Now, Brian Ferry also started a career as a solo artist in 1973 with These Foolish Things, and continuing on with Bittersweet in 2018. He had 16 solo albums so far, far outnumbering Roxy Music's total output of 8 studio albums from 72 to 82, not including live albums from reunion tours in 90, 2001, 2003, and there'll probably be one from the 2022. Next is Country Life. Gone are the gatefold sleeves, but here's the original sleeve. I know, it even took me back. I haven't seen that sleeve in a while. Like, oh my God, this is rated R. Having been categorized as undescribable by the music press and quite a few music radio stations pretty much around the world, by Country Life 1974, Roxy began to be labeled art rock. But remarkably, they could always pull off a hit tune or two. Now, Country Life seems more subdued, but it has early radio hit songs All I want to, all I want is you, out of the blue, the thrill of it all, and it kind of gives some hints to where Brian Ferry's solo career was going because he would do many cover albums, and over the years on his solo records would just cover people from Al Green to Bob Dylan. He actually devoted a whole album to Dylan songs, as well as doing Dylan recordings over the years. Probably the last really good juicy one was Siren, 1975. And yes, that's Jerry Hall on the cover. Jerry Hall and Ferry were a thing for a while. And I believe this is pre-Bianca Jagger. So Jerry Hall was, or is it post? Between Ferry and Mick Jagger, I can't figure out where Jerry Hall fit into the whole thing before she ended up a Rupert Murdoch, which is true. So in a way, Siren is better than Country Life. The album has more highs and lows, and often Eddie Jobson's keyboards and synthesizers equal the measure in soundscapes Eno brought to the first two albums. That being said, there's a lot of tasty stuff on here. Love is the Drug, which I'm sure in '75 was an early dance club favorite. They probably started the remixes around that time. Both Ends Burning are probably two of the more, let's say, danceable songs on this. But when we got to Sentimental Fool and She Sells, I think Ferry was trying to say something about his love life or things going on in his love life. Nice to see that the full band is credited as band members here at this point in time, with Paul Thompson as a member of Roxy Music as well as John Gustafson. Later Roxy albums, you wouldn't have that. You pretty much had Ferry, Manzanera, McKay, whoever was playing keyboards at the time, and then later on, even that person was dropped and just became added with the other people. So, appreciation of Roxy Music. Also, I have a 2022 re-release of Siren, which a more beautifully color-hued cover. Still not a gatefold, but it looks really nice. One of the problems, though, this was printed in Czechoslovakia, and anyone knows vinyl pressings in Czechoslovakia during the pandemic, they're iffy. This was a good one. Sometimes a little low on bass response. So, why Roxy Music? Interesting band. You have the Manzanera and Jobson, Eno. That's your Prog connections right there in terms of musicians. Their sound is interesting by far, and it is progressive music in a way, and it's experimental for its time. Brian Ferry was the ultimate lounge lizard, and probably before David Bowie adopted that persona for the Berlin period. He was the original Brian Ferry. So, very good albums. There's actually something to recommend on every one. Roxy Music, For Your Pleasure, Stranded, Country Life, and Siren. If it came down to, well, Lewis, which are the two best Roxy Music albums you could recommend, I would say the debut, which is that one, and For Your Pleasure, which was this one. Only because they are the more unusual in terms of what they did with the instrumentation and managed to pull off songs you could sing in the shower. Well, not quite. Well, could sing Yes in the shower, and you could sing Genesis in the shower, so I certainly think you could sing some of these. Anyway, an appreciation of Roxy music. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. See you soon.